So I'm back. I watched what I created in episode 1, and I thought it was a little bit stilted and scripted because, of course, it was scripted and I was using a teleprompter. So I thought I'd just do something a little bit more real to fill in some of the gaps here. I didn't really talk about my childhood except to say my parents got divorced. So I had a pretty non-traditional childhood. I think we probably fell into the lower middle class. Money was always an issue. It's probably caused my parents to split up. We moved a lot, had to make friends every time we moved. Got difficult. I didn't have a lot of great role models in my life. My parents tried their best, but I think the money issue was such a driving force in their lives that, they basically worked to make enough money to survive and do whatever they needed to do. But it wasn't the kind of, childhood or upbringing that I think I would have preferred or that I even knew existed until later in life when I started to meet people and saw what their families looked like. What's really interesting now is I understand why they thought it was so important for me to have a better life than they did, because they didn't want me ending up with the same kind of struggles that they had. But at the same time, they're basically pushing me into the unknown because neither of them had been to college. My dad was a furniture delivery man, and then he, out of the blue, opened up a pizza restaurant, which he had for a good 10 or 15 years. My mom was a seamstress. They didn't really know what they were getting me into because they hadn't been there themselves. They never had corporate jobs. They never went to college. They knew that it would probably give me better opportunities, but they didn't really know the kinds of challenges it would present once I got those. I guess it's one way of saying it. So I had to kind of learn for myself, and I've certainly learned a lot through the life experiences that I've had, but I just think it's something really interesting that I didn't know at the time. And I think people don't realize that when you push your kids to have better lives than you're not going to be able to necessarily guide them all the way because you haven't been there yourself. I didn't talk about coming out at all. I didn't really come out to myself until my late 20s. So kind of fell into that whole denial thing for years. And then I didn't even tell, my dad passed away. There was no way I could tell him because he was extremely homophobic. The kind of person that thinks you get AIDS from swimming in the water in Provincetown, which ironically is where I ended up getting married. And then I didn't tell my family. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. You kind of have this fear, like, oh, what's the reaction going to be? And I was like, whatever. I don't want to be like everybody else and make some huge deal out of it. So I took the chicken way out. I basically made a Christmas card with a picture of me and my boyfriend at the time, who I ended up marrying. I think it was 2007. And I just put it in the mail, sent out 60 Christmas card, and waited to see what happened. And a couple days later, I think the phone rang, or I got an email from one of my sisters, and it was just like an easy way out. I didn't have to go through like sitting down and getting up the courage to tell them face to face. I just sent out an email and said, they'll figure it out, hopefully, and they did. And it wasn't a big deal. They were like fine with it, whatever. So that was kind of a relief. So that's my coming out story. So a lot of things in my life I never thought would happen, so it's really interesting that a lot of them are happening. I never thought I'd meet the right person. I never thought I'd get married. So fortunately, I remember in 2015 when the right to marriage thing was passed, and we were like ecstatic because we got married in Massachusetts where it was legal, but then it was like being legalized state by state. I'm like, what are we supposed to do? Like travel around the country and get legally married in every state? And then all of a sudden, it was legal everywhere, so our marriage was recognized. But then, of course, nobody thinks they're going to get divorced. And so that happened. So that was kind of a shock. I should have seen it coming. My mom's been divorced twice. But I don't know. I didn't think it was going to be me. I never thought I'd have my own biological children. I looked at the, adoption route, which I think is a lot more complicated and difficult to get approved because of all the scrutiny. Whereas if you go through surrogacy, it's more about, can you afford to do it because it's so incredibly expensive. So, the thought of actually having my own children is just like amazing and kind of crazy, and thanks to modern science, but it's just something I never dreamed of because I thought, well, I'm gay and I'm probably never gonna have kids because I can't, and that's that. So it's amazing how life presents you opportunities that you never dreamed of and gives you the opportunity to pursue those and kind of guide you on your way. One of the reasons I want to have kids is I want to raise them in a much better and different way than how I was raised. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think my parents did a fantastic job. They just were traditional parents, not particularly close to their kids. And I want to have a much closer relationship. And I really want to raise a daughter who is equally as accepted and strong and successful as my son, because I saw that not happen with my sisters. My son is probably going to have a disadvantage because I'm going to be so focused on my daughter succeeding, unfortunately. But let's just say I want to treat them equally in every way, shape, or form. Like, I'm not even sure I'm going to give my daughter dolls. I'm going to kind of let her see what happens and what she wants and let her evolve and make that decision. I don't really believe in all these societal norms and definitions of what a girl should be or do and what a boy should be or do. We'll just take it as it comes. I saw a couple interesting things when I got to college. One was I made friends with people who went to really competitive schools where it was perfectly acceptable and admired to get good grades so they could succeed in life. Whereas at my high school, we were considered nerds and we were made fun of. And so it's just like a weird, different kind of atmosphere. I'm like, well, why wasn't my school like that? Why did I have to go to a school where success wasn't admired or favored or respected? I don't know. And then, and this goes back to the family story, seeing my friends with their siblings and their still married parents all together as a unit was just mind-boggling, because I was like, oh, I've never really seen this before, and this is what a, quote, normal family looks like. The parents are still married. They're in their 40s, 50s, or 60s. They've got kids, and even going to stay with friends at their house and seeing what the household kind of looks like I had never seen that before. So you get this desire to have that, and even if you can't have it in your own family, in the one that you were born into, you can certainly strive to create that in the family that you create on your own. So that's something I'm very kind of aware of, and I think will definitely mold how I raise my children. I talk a little bit about what I do in my free time, but I'm very much kind of into out of the ordinary things. I don't do any traditional sports because I was really bad at them growing up. So I was kind of an outcast. I wasn't athletic as a kid at all. I couldn't throw a baseball. Girls in junior high threw a football better than I could. I really sucked at volleyball. I was teased. I was called a shoebox. I was the person in the front row who would end up in the net instead of getting the ball over the net. I could barely serve over the net. I was the person the ball would hit in the head when I wasn't looking. So I try to stay away from those because I can never catch up. Whereas if a brand new sport evolves like pickleball, well, heck, nobody else plays it. So I'm starting at a kind of a level playing field. So I like non-traditional things. My rollerblade straps broke like last year, so that kind of sucks. But I like rollerblading. I took windsurfing and sailing lessons in Connecticut. More recently, I've taken up stand-up paddleboarding, so it's nice to go to the lake and just kind of do that. Very easy, low-stress sport there. What else? I'm kind of a sponge in terms of information. I listen to 5 or 6 podcasts a day. That's where I get my news. I also watch at least an hour of news every evening, and I love the fact that I have time to do that in my life right now. When I had corporate jobs, my life was so jam-packed that I never felt like I knew what was going on in the world because I just didn't have time to pay attention to it. Particularly now with the election coming up and everything that's going on in the world, I think it's important to make time in your life to pay attention to that and participate in it in whatever way you can, because otherwise you're just kind of in a bubble and you don't really know what's going on. And unfortunately, in our democracy, this is kind of paradoxical. We let everybody vote, but I think a lot of people are just uninformed because they just don't have time to be informed, which again is unfortunate. So anyway, I studied French in elementary and junior high, which helped when I went to Paris. And then I took an Italian class before I went to Italy, so that was fun. I learned a little bit of Greek, but I hated it. I did not like being Greek growing up. I hated Greek school. I did not like Sunday school. I wasn't particularly religious. So I pretty much detached myself from anything to do with Greek or Greek people, which is why I have a nickname instead of my first name, which is clearly Greek. So it wasn't until I went to Greece in my early 40s for the first time that I understood why my dad was so proud of our heritage. And it was a very humbling experience, but it's like this light bulb went off and I'm like, now I get it. I, for the first time, was very, very proud of Greece and everything the Greeks have done for the world. But until then, I didn't really care. So I used to like to cook, and we started ordering those meal delivery services. We had HelloFresh, and then we had Blue Apron, which was just a lot better. But then I went on a keto. We stopped doing that, and then I went on a keto diet in 2020, which I've been on for about 4 years now. So I started ordering prepackaged factory meals, which are really easy to prepare, but I'm kind of over those now, so I'm not sure where I landed. And I didn't do the keto diet because I needed to. I did it because I was curious to see how difficult it would be to be on that diet and what it would do to my body. And it wasn't that hard. You basically just count carbs, protein, and fat grams and aim for a ratio of 7% fat, 20% protein, and 10% carbs. And I had a mobile app on my phone to do this. So it's really interesting to see what that will do to you. Like I look at actors who will take on a role and put on like 50 pounds, and I'm like, God, that's crazy. Then you have to get rid of it. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, it's amazing that you can be disciplined and follow a specific diet and see what it does to you. I actually used to be, I consider this fat. I weigh 155, but I got up to like 165 in my 20s because I was eating all the bad food that my parents brought me up on. And it didn't occur to me that you need to do two things. It's not just exercise, it's more your diet. You need to do both of those. You can exercise all you want, but if you eat the wrong food, you'll never be in the shape you want to be in. So those are two things I learned, and that's why I'm very, very health conscious. My dad, they smoked their entire lives. My mom still smokes. And my dad ended up getting diabetes. He had heart disease, all kinds of things like that, because he just didn't know better, because he was brought up eating unhealthy stuff. And as a parent, he transferred that to us. But I figured out what the right thing to do was through educating myself about it. So last thing I want to say is I think one of the things I like, sorry, this is like tilting weird. One of the things I like most about real estate is you get to be you, whoever you are, 24 hours a day. I didn't realize it till I left the corporate world that you're actually in a bubble, and there's a work version of you, and then there's the real you that you become when you come home every night. And that's two very different things. But when you leave the corporate world and your job puts you in the real world, you get to be who you actually are all the time. So I don't have two different personalities anymore. I don't even remember what my corporate personality was like. So it's nice getting to be who you are and getting to do your job being that person without having to put on some fake, stiff corporate facade every day. I mean, you kind of lose who you are if you're doing that 40 hours plus a week, and you're only the true you when you come home at night and on the weekends. I mean, the majority of your life, you're pretending to be something else if your job is something that you can't be your natural self at. So, and I think my ex is kind of, he's in the same boat. He was in the corporate world for a little bit, but he's a cosmetologist, so he cuts hair all day, and he just gets to talk to his clients all day, gets to be himself. So that's one of the things that's really interesting that I didn't even realize was happening. So I have friends now. I have a friend who calls me up and like he's really kind of envious of what I've been able to do over the last 7 years. And I don't really know what to tell him. It's like, I think people are raised by their parents to want to achieve certain things. So they study something in college and they get a good job, but they don't realize that once they do that, they run the risk of building a life around that can only be paid for by a job that commands a certain income. And then you're kind of trapped. You don't have the freedom to try other things. Like one of the things I've been able to do in the last 7 years is because I had savings. Like real estate, you don't make any money for the first year. Well, if you can't survive, then you can't try out real estate, because how are you going to pay your bills? So I know this from personal experience. Money doesn't buy you happiness, but it affords you experiences that can make you happy, or it gives you opportunities that you might not otherwise be able to take on. So that's my little spiel about life in general. So again, thanks for watching, and I hope this one was a lot more entertaining. Have a great day.